Why should you move away from home? There was a time where I felt like moving away from home felt out of reach. And I kind of forced myself subconsciously, put myself in a situation where I had to move away from home. But there was like a strong feeling, a strong reason, something heavy that I kept carrying around. And it had to do with who I was, the choices I was making, the people I was around, the habits I had created for myself, and how it all made me feel and think and even overthink. Now, if you're thinking about moving away from home and you're anything like me, that has a lot to do with these topics. I think there's 3 things you really have to ask yourself before you can find out where it is you want to go and why it is you want to leave. Now, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, who am I now? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What are my habits that create me and the reality around me? You're probably feeling stuck or limited or just way too comfortable, and you want some sort of challenge or change or excitement in your life. How do you feel? Are you happy? Are you frustrated? Are you tired? Are your habits productive, or are you procrastinating? Are you seeing things you want to do and not doing them? Now, what about the people around you? Do you have no one? Do you have too many people? Are they influencing you to do the things you want to be doing, or is their influence creating bad habits in your life? All of these things are variables in the problem you're dealing with right now. Now let's talk about who you were. And something to keep in mind is that who you are now is always a product of who you were yesterday, of who you were in the past. Which brings us to our next topic, who I was. Now, who I was is a lot heavier of a topic for me. Who I used to be was not always happy. In fact, there were more bad days than good. Who I was overthought easily into every little scenario. Who I was hated themselves, and who I was had habits that reflected that. Now, there was a lot that went into this, and a lot of these things had to do with who I was surrounding myself with. The most significant reason to who I was in my past is I didn't know how to change. I didn't know what change was. I didn't know what change felt like. I didn't know change was possible. And for you, the least healthy thing you can do is believe who you were is who you are now. Now, I'm not saying living at home is a bad thing or a negative thing. There's a lot of people who have grown up at home and not experienced these things, not known what it's like to be treated day in and day out like you just don't matter. When I was younger, I was way too nice. I was way too friendly. I was way too positive. Now, it's not necessarily a bad attitude to have. It's just when you're too much of these things all the time in the wrong way, can allow negativity to seep into your life, especially with people you're surrounding yourself with. So like growing up, I was never really that confident. I was never really that proud of myself. I never really loved myself, but I also never really knew who I was. There was a time I felt like I was constantly chasing being someone else, constantly looking for approval from people who I thought were my friends or posting stuff online. Now, because of my lack of confidence and sense of self-worth, combined with this positive, impulsive, people-pleaser attitude I was such an easy target. And because I knew what it felt like, standing up for myself felt too bad because I really didn't want to make other people feel that way. Now, I'm not trying to throw blame out and give some sort of sob story about my past. It's just everyone experiences growing up differently. And this had a lot to do with my experience. This affected all the things that I've talked about, like my mindset. And I was constantly overthinking about superficial things like parties, social media, gossip. And this caused me to feel anxious, depressed, even hateful and resentful towards myself and God. And because I was feeling this way so often, it started to really affect like my habits. I had trouble focusing in school. I was staying up late playing video games. Even taking my frustration and my anger and all these feelings I kept bottling up out on my family at home. My childhood really wasn't all that bad, and I'm still very fortunate for the life I was given. But when you're physically and mentally developing, a lot of these things seem like that's all the world is. Seem like that's all your reality will be. The most important thing you can do now is be aware of it. A lot of you may still have the same habits, feel the same things, think the same things, and be surrounded by the same people that made you feel this way. And if you think that's you, I promise you, no one is going to change it for you. No one's going to save you, but you can save yourself. Which brings me to who you want to become. I'm guessing the person you want to be is not the person in your shoes right now. The life you want is not made up of the thoughts, feelings, habits you're still experiencing and still holding on to. The person you want to become is literally waiting for you. They're waiting for you to change your mind, to stop thinking so much. They're waiting for you to stop seeing yourself from the perspective of others and hating yourself for it. The person you want to become needs you to start loving yourself, because you will not find that person without it. If you're lazy, try surrounding yourself with people that push you to do better, that care about how you feel and how you think. If you're antisocial, find habits or hobbies that you enjoy, that make you feel productive, that make you feel good about yourself. Now, let's dial back to why I think you should move. Changing who you are might be the most difficult experience for every human being. And it's because almost all of us can relate to it, but almost no one can really relate to your own experience. And this can make changing feel like a very lonely process, which can make it difficult to even want to change, and even more difficult if you keep yourself in the environment that is connected to all of these emotions, thoughts, habits, people, making the thought of breaking out of that comfort zone overwhelming. So I believe the best process to change who you are may very well be putting yourself in a new environment, somewhere out of your comfort zone, somewhere that is going to force you to adapt. And when I first moved and lived on my own, I was definitely very lonely. I was still making the same mistakes, still thinking the same things, and experiencing the same feelings. But eventually, things did change. I started realizing what I was capable of, like having control over my thoughts and my emotions. And it was because I was in somewhere completely different, somewhere completely new, surrounded by new people, creating new experiences for myself. Then one day I realized I don't have any excuses anymore. And everything from that point on, my life and my reality was completely what I made it, which for me was not even scary. It didn't make me anxious. I was finally truly happy with myself and who I was, because now I was completely in control. And I think that that is a realization and an experience that every single person needs to have, especially if your childhood and teenage years were similar to mine. So if you've watched this video all the way through and you feel like it really relates to you and who you are, then I want you to do something. Not for me, but for yourself. Grab something to write with and some paper. I want you to make 2 lists side by side. One with the reasons why you shouldn't move, and one with the reasons why you should. And once you make this list, I want you to study it and analyze each reason. And finally, ask yourself, if I'm really feeling this anxious, this depressed, lonely, just unhappy, what have you got to lose going anywhere else? Well, that wraps up my first episode of ADHDTV by Illumid. So if you enjoyed this content or connected with it, please like, please subscribe, comment, anything or nothing, I don't care. As long as you found some value in this, that is really all that matters to me. Thanks for watching. Share this with someone who needs it. And for the love of God, do not stop pushing yourself. You will get there eventually. That's all I got. See you in the next episode.